Hi everyone, and welcome to the 13th NIFTI webinar on the topic of incubator policies and guidelines. My name is Brianna Bowman. I am the National Technical Assistance Coordinator at the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. I am joined today by Robin Chanin, the Director of Global Growers, Maggie Donin, the Beginning Farmer Specialist at the Intervale Center, and Katie Kubovcik, the Training Program Manager at Big River Farms, a project of the Minnesota Food Association. We have a pretty packed agenda, so I'll try and keep the intro brief, but we're going to begin with a technological orientation, followed by an overview of NIFTI, and then we'll roll right into our topics. The format today is going to be a little different than you might be used to if you've tuned into NIFTI webinars before. We're going to move topic through presentations. So for each topic, you'll see a title slide, and then you'll hear from each of our presenters on that topic, beginning with Robin, followed by Maggie, and finishing with Katie. We'll then transition to the next topic, and all three will address that topic sequentially. We'll finish with an opportunity to ask questions, and if we do run short on time, you can email questions to me, and I'll make sure that they're answered by our presenters. We're using the WebEx technology for this webinar. All participants are muted upon entry to eliminate background noise, and please do remain that way. You can submit questions throughout by using the chat icon, but the questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. In the text of your question, please do include to whom you'd like to direct your question. If you're having audio issues, you can address them using this audio tab. And if you'd like to scroll through the webinar itself or change settings, you can return to your home screen using this blue button here. Many of you are familiar with the National Incubator Farm Training Initiative, but I'll give a brief overview for those of you who may not be. NIFTI is a project of the New Entry Sustainable Farming Project. New Entry was established in 1998 to provide a range of services to beginning farmers in Massachusetts. We're based in Lowell, Massachusetts, but now manage 2 national programs, of which NIFTI is one. NIFTI began in 2012 in response to an uptick in requests for technical assistance about incubator farm program management. NIFTI was designed to address shared challenges of incubator farm management and disseminate best practices from the field. NIFTI now manages a network of over 200 incubator farm projects nationwide and strives to develop practical tools and trainings to assist in program design and implementation. NIFTI is also working to strengthen national and regional communities of practice. And for more about this, you can visit our website. Some of the specific services that NIFTI offers are an online library of training materials, webinars such as this one, a community of practice listserv, and in-person events. Our next in-person event is our National Field School, October 7th through 9th in Durham, North Carolina. If you subscribe to the listserv, you'll have an opportunity to find about this event. So without further ado, I will let us move on to what you all came here for, and I'll pass the mic over to Robin to begin introductions.
Hi everyone, my name's Robin Chanin. I am the director and co-founder of Global Growers Network, which is based in Atlanta, Georgia. Our mission is to create opportunities in sustainable agriculture by growing good food, training farmers, and providing economic opportunities. We are a fairly young organization. We've been around for 5 years. We primarily partner with experienced farmers who came to the United States as refugees, but we also work with American-born farmers with an emphasis on serving farmers of color. We manage 4 growing sites and also support independent farms and gardens, but today I will focus on our incubator farm. We hope to provide something for everyone and to create a pipeline into careers in agriculture, giving families the opportunity to start small and decide if it's something that they want to be able to expand with support from us along the way. So turning it over to Maggie now.
Hey everyone, this is Maggie Donin from the Intervale Center in Burlington, Vermont. Many of you might have heard me speak on some other webinars, but just to give a brief introduction, we have had a farm incubator program for about 20 years. We manage about 350 acres of land and lease land to about 11 farm businesses this year. Our mission overall as an organization is to strengthen community food systems, and we do that through a number of programs, including our incubator program. We have a food hub that distributes food to about 1,000 individuals over the course of the season. We have a conservation nursery that plants native tree species all over Vermont on riverways and on farms. We have a farm viability business planning program that works with farms all over the state, in addition to a number of other things that we do. But again, like Robin said, I'll also be focusing on our farm incubator program today for the presentation. And then I'll pass it over to Katie.
Hi, this is Katie. I work for the Minnesota Food Association. Big River Farms is our training program. MFA has been around since the 80s, but started training farmers in '98, and then really our program took on its current form in 2005, where we're leasing plots of land as well as doing classroom trainings. And our mission is working with underserved farmers to train for organic vegetable production. So I will pass it back to Robin. And
All right, so let's see. I am the presenter. Okay, so getting started, I would say that you know, how you manage your space is going to be very dependent on the space itself. So depending on the owner, your land agreement, you know, what zoning you is and what zoning you're in and any other particular circumstances. Where we are at, we identified and leased a piece of land. We have a market rate lease on what used to be a horse farm that is located in a residential suburban area outside Atlanta. We converted the horse farm to a vegetable farm, creating the layout that we wanted and adding the necessary support infrastructure. And then we started our farmer outreach, and we knew somewhat what we were looking for by exploring examples of best practices from other incubator programs around the country. Primarily, we were connected to a network through the Refugee Agricultural Partnership Program of folks that we were able to reach out to. So using all this information, our policies were built into the lease agreements, the site use agreements that we signed with the participating farmers, really based on our best guess of what was going to happen. And I would say that since then, we've only made fairly minor adjustments, and if anything, we've really moved to simplify the rules rather than adding to them and getting more complex. And as we talk today, I'll continue to expand upon what that means, and then passing it on to Maggie here, and our next slide.
So I obviously have not, well, maybe not obviously, but I have not been with the program since the beginning. So unfortunately, I can't give everybody a really good idea of kind of how things came to be how they are today, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s. But basically, we have something called a farm manual, which really contains all of our policies and guidelines. It's a long document. It's available on the NIFTI toolshed, so you can take a look at that. And that really guides our program. It was created in 2005 to 2006. And then within that, we have livestock policies and land use policies, which are what get into things about weed management and compost requirements for livestock, things like using organic grains, abiding by some of our best practices set by our state agency of agriculture. So those were created 2009 to 2010, so a little bit after the more general farm manual was created. And in terms of those policies and guidelines, we really try to evaluate them every year and make sure that they still make sense. So, you know, my goal is really not to have sort of these archaic policies that we've just had in place because they've always been in place, but to really look at them and make sure that they make sense. And we have a policy for adding new rules and guidelines, which involves basically, you know, approval from the farmer community to say, we've created this policy around, for example, something like alcohol for events on the farm. We had a, just to give you an example, we had an sort of a issue come up this year where a farm was interested in having an event and they were planning on having it be BYOB, and we had to look at this and say, oh, you know, we've never had to deal with this before. You can't really have a public BYOB event that's being advertised. And so, you know, we talked to the farm and worked with the farm and had to create a policy to say, you know, you need to be abiding by legal guidelines when you're hosting an event on your farm, and making sure that the farmers agree with this policy, that it makes sense to them, that they understand where it's coming from. So new additions do happen regularly, but you know, we really try to not pile on too many guidelines and too many policies where people feel overwhelmed by those kinds of things. And I think Robin made a good point in terms of, for us, you know, a lot of our policies are governed by our land situation. So our land is conserved with the Vermont Land Trust, and we have a land management plan. And then we're also in FEMA regulated floodplain. So a lot of our policies and rules around building and things like that, you know, have to do with the fact that we are also being regulated by higher powers other than just our organization. So passing it on to Katie here.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. So let's see. There we go. Okay, so creating and updating policies. Our training program has gone through a lot of changes since we started in '98. And so like I said, in 2005 is when things took their current form, and so that's when some of our policies were created. So the participation agreement is our main policy document that we use. And actually that was 2010 is when we started doing classroom trainings, and so actually that's when the participation agreement was created that we currently follow. And we make minor adjustments, but it's stayed pretty much the same. There are new needs that arise for policies and guidelines. And we haven't honestly done a great job of documenting some of those additions and changes. We've had the same staff for a long time, but in the last year and a half, our full staff has completely turned over except for my position. So we've really realized that more needs to be documented. And then along with that is changes to policy. We don't have, you know, policy that's written down around that. So we've realized that's something we need to put into place because staff's going to keep changing. And in the past, it's just been something, it's always been a discussion based on evaluation when changes need to occur. And, you know, something may have been written up, but it wasn't very formal. So definitely realizing we need to do more of that. The participation agreement has, you know, quite a bit included, and I'll go over that a little bit more later. And we also have a lot of regulation in place because we lease our land from a bigger organization, and so they have the regulations that we need to follow and communicate as well. So that's all I have for that. Back to Robin.
So on our end, here's a little bit about what it looks like to join the incubator farm and the requirements. The most important thing that we do is anyone who is interested, we host a full day course that includes a classroom component and a practical component. And that is designed to give an overview of what it means to have a career in farming and what it means to participate specifically in our program. In a sense, we want to scare people away a little bit and squash any overly romantic ideas about farming. But at the same time, we also want to highlight opportunities that are specific to our region and our food shed and encourage people to take advantage of those. And our goal with that course is that everybody walks away with the information that they need to make a good decision for themselves. In addition to that, it's a chance for us to spend some time getting to know potential applicants and for them to get to know us and our team. We don't say this to everyone, but it's not that far from hosting a group interview. The practical component of the day involves a field project. One year, for instance, it was digging an irrigation trench. And again, it's a reminder for potential participants that there's hard work involved, and it's also a chance for our team to be sure people are prepared for the physicality of taking on a plot at the farm. After people go through that course, if they still want to make an application, they make an appointment to come back to sit down with one of our staff members one-on-one. And we go through a basic information intake form. And the most important part of that conversation is reviewing their work and family schedules to confirm that they really have the time to commit to be successful. Recognizing that people have the tendency to get excited about opportunities and can overcommit themselves, and we really don't want to set people up for failure. We work primarily with people who have agricultural experience in another country, and so emphasizing, what does it look like here is important. And being sure that people have access to reliable transportation and that they're truly interested for the incubator farm in commercial agriculture, and doing farming as a career, not just a hobby. If that's not something they want to do, we have community gardens and such that we can refer them to. So we recognize it's not necessarily the best fit for everyone, and so we're mainly screening for really being interested in doing this, being available, and having some basic stability in place, such as transportation and a fairly regular work schedule in order to participate effectively. And a lot of that comes from working with primarily low-income families that are not always in the most stable position, and sometimes it's not the right fit for them now, but they know it's an opportunity and will come back in a year or two. So passing it on back to Maggie now. Okay.
Cycles in a year. Oh, can you hear me now? So over here on the right, just the timing. So there's one application cycle a year. In April, I send out an available land document to partners and listservs, and mostly fairly local and regional networks. We're usually not trying to target folks who might be moving from the other side of the country for this opportunity. So we give people a chance to fill out an application. It's a short application, just 4 or 5 questions about what they want to do, what they're interested in, how they plan on supporting themselves other than just a farm, and what they see as their long-term goal. And then we have about a couple months there or about a month to kind of decide from those applicants which we want to ask a full business plan from. So in July, we ask the people that we're interested in for a business plan, and then their business plans are due October 1st, and then they present the business plans to all the current farmers in October or November when we have a farmer meeting. And then the farmers sort of critique the business plan, ask the person questions, just meet them, get to know them a little bit, and then the farmers provide me and our director with sort of a thumbs up or thumbs down about the person, whether they're interested in them as a participant or not, and then ultimately it's our decision. And I like to be able to notify the applicant in November or December about whether or not they are going to be accepted, and that way they have the winter before the season starts to really make their plans for either changing where they're living or changing their job, doing all their seed ordering and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of what we're looking for in participants, we really want people who have at least 3 years of farm production experience and preferably a year in a management role. We also really want to get a clear idea from them about what they want to produce on their farm and the market demand for that product. So, I definitely get a lot of people who are interested who sort of have a vague interest in, I want to be a farmer, I really like Burlington, I want to live here, maybe I want to do some diversified vegetables, but really getting people to get into the nitty-gritty of like what it is that you want to produce, why is it that you want to produce that, on what kind of scale, how are you going to do it. We want someone who'd fit well into our farming community and can get along with people. As many of these incubator programs are, they're not like being on a solitary farm out in the middle of nowhere, which for many people is the appeal, but for other people, they don't necessarily do so well in a community environment. So getting an idea from that person about how much they like to be around other people, looking for a long-term vision from them, and that they can articulate somewhat of a long-term vision about where they want to end up. We really want folks to have either support from a savings account or off-farm income as a prerequisite, some way that they're going to be able to support themselves in the beginning that's not going to be just from the farm. And then we also require that they have not owned a farm previously on their own. So, a lot of these things are obviously on a case-by-case basis, and we have had people who have been interested who have owned farms, and, all of our policies in the farm manual, many of them say, they're at the discretion of staff decisions. So if, they're not set in stone, and we do have the option of going back on a policy that might be written down. But we do try really hard to use those as a guide.
Okay, so we have 3 different programs that are all targeting a different audience. Our basic training program is the one that's been around the longest. So for this program, you do not need any experience farming. You do have to want to farm commercially, so not just for your family, but also organically. We are certified organics, so. And then you really need to have enough resources to participate. So have reliable transportation if you don't speak English, to provide your own interpretation, money, so again, some other income, and time. And so those are the things that we really kind of talk about if the program's a good fit. Also, you have to be a minority in the farming world, so that can be a lot of different things, but for our grants, that's what we're funded for. The whole farm management program is for people who have either completed our basic training program or something equivalent, so people that have some experience farming. So they're able to become certified independently, certified organic. They have their own markets that they're managing, and they're able to manage more of their plot on their own, so doing their own tractor work, applying their own compost and cover crop, and really managing a piece of land. And then the Organic Transitions program, both the whole farm and Organic Transitions we just added last year, so we're still kind of refining these programs. But again, for the Organic Transitions, we're looking for farmers who basically know how to farm, have their own markets, and are interested in learning organic certification. So our application process is pretty simple. For the basic training, it's just a simple one-page application, and then we have a questionnaire that asks, is the Big River Farms training program right for me? And then, this next slide has that. So just looking at those same things, do you want to be a commercial grower, organic? Do you have a schedule where you can attend all our classes? Are you able to be at the farm? Do you have the time in your life to commit 10 to 20 hours a week? Do you have the financial resources? Do you understand English? Do you fit the description of limited resource or underserved? And do you have the physical strength and ability to work outside for long periods? That doesn't always, weed everyone out, but it's a, start that we've used. We do then have an interview after they filled out the application. And then if we decide it's a good fit, then which is usually the end of the year, then they put a $50 deposit and sign the participation agreement to secure their spot. For the whole farm and Organic Transition, like I said, these are new programs, so we don't have a clear application process at this point. The whole farm is pretty straightforward because it's usually after 3 years in a basic training that someone moves into that program to focus on the whole farm management skills. For Organic Transitions, we do have a lot of interest, but we don't have a lot of land available. So we're kind of currently trying to figure that out, how we're going to find people that are going to be a good fit for that program. So let's see. Go back to Robin.
All right, so required documents to participate. The main thing is our site management agreement, which I'll get into a little bit. We also require that people attend monthly workshops, and there are some other requirements to participate in our market co-op. So the site management agreement really covers just the operations. What do you need to do to make a space that is shared by a group of people work? One thing that's not listed here on the slide that I left out is this also includes a liability release and a photo release form where people can either accept or decline that we can use their images in any marketing materials. So site management is going to go into tools and storage. What does it look like to maintain your plot? What are the requirements, such as using organic practices, taking care of weeds, waste management, whether that is trash or organic waste material, use of the irrigation system, responsibilities for the greenhouse. We have an office space. Farmers are, responsible for parking in the right area and also managing visitors and other just general operations. And then our market agreement, this is something that I could talk a whole lot more about, won't spend a lot of time on, but to participate in our market co-op, you're required to attend a food safety and post-harvest handling class. That is the #1 requirement. And then there's other required documents you have to submit. We put together first what our market crop plan is and develop a crop bidding matrix that goes along with that, that we plug eligible farmers into, and then go through the process of bidding for crops, farmer crop plans, submitting those, and we have a production contract that we use. And this is really designed to be a very interdependent process. We are making we're making commitments in the marketplace and relying on our farmers to help grow that food. And so we provide ongoing technical assistance to ensure that they are going to be successful with that. Not everyone is required to participate in our market co-op, but we've only ever had one farmer out of 16 farmers decline to participate, so that's really a pretty popular program. And access to our market co-op is really one of the main reasons that farmers give for joining our program to begin with, is the support on the business and marketing side of things. And some people say it's actually more important than the land. And only second-year farmers are eligible to sign a production agreement. First-year farmers we still support their sales, but we don't make any guarantees about that. Back to Maggie. All right.
So we, right off the bat, so once somebody has submitted a business plan, that's really like kind of the first required document that's part of that application process. So once we have that and somebody has, has been accepted and decided to enroll in the program, the first thing that we want to get from them is we require all of our tenants to have $500,000 in liability insurance. We're sort of vaguely considering changing this to $1 million in liability insurance, only because many of them have that already for the farmers market. That seems to be what the farmers market and many of the wholesale accounts are requiring. So just to make it even across the board, but we've stuck with $500,000 for now. So once we have evidence of that, we have them come in and sign the lease. And our goal is to have the leases signed by January 1st, since it is technically a year-long lease. This has been quite a challenge just because folks are making a lot of last-minute decisions about land and maybe haven't decided yet if they want to take on an additional parcel, and or they're away for the winter. And so this is something that we're working really, really hard on in terms of our policies, is being more firm about we want to have a lease on that land with somebody, because if they're out there and they're doing stuff, even if it's the winter, we want to have some sort of formal agreement between ourselves and the farmer that lays out, what we have decided upon together. So we've also started to get a security deposit from people. So I believe it's $250 that goes along with your lease. And this is to cover things like if somebody leaves and they leave a bunch of trash behind, drip tape or whatever, and we have to clean it up, helping to pay for our time to do that, helping to pay for potentially, needing to turn the fields under or whatever, however they might end up leaving the land. We do have a policy about how they're supposed to leave everything, but, people just up and leave and sometimes and might be totally impossible to be in touch with, and so that security deposit helps us know that we have a little something there to support us in doing that work. So within the lease, the farmers are agreeing to our land use and livestock policies, as well as some of the other things outlined in the farm manual. I believe our lease is also on the NIFTI website. If anybody wants a copy of that, I'm happy to share it. So then with farmers, we require, or with incubator farmers, we require an annual self-evaluation that they do as a group. And so it used to be done individually, and the self-evaluation, again, is on the tool shed, and that really talks about, did you meet your personal goals this year? Did you meet your financial goals? How do you want to improve next year? So it's a fairly, kind of just a self-reflection document, and last year I had the participants do it together and kind of share how the season went for each of them, which I think was effective and helpful. And then we also require that the incubators give us an updated business plan and financials each year. And this is actually has been relatively challenging to obtain, just because people are busy, and some people are really good about turning a new business plan in, some people aren't, and you're kind of constantly chasing after them. And once the season gets going, it's hard to get your hands on it. And then for all of our farmers, our incubators and also our mentor farmers, our long-term tenants, we require them to submit a farm report, which is used it's an annual summary of what's going on in the farm. So as it says here, you know, we're collecting information about their gross income and their net income, which is information that we're not sharing. We're just using this internally. It provides them with an opportunity to give us feedback. We talk about how many employees they have, updating their contact information. So this is a really important document that we collect every year in February that just allows the farmers to kind of share with us what overall happened for them on the farm, and allows us to be able to say, you know, $1.2 million worth of food came off of this land, you know, things like that. So we do share gross aggregate data, but we don't share data from individual farmers. Passing it on to you, Katie.
Okay, so our main required document is the participation agreement, or which is basically a land lease agreement for some of the whole farm management or the organic transition program. And in it, the participant is agreeing to the fees, the program fees, and additional expenses, so kind of breaking down what is covered in the program and what is not. There's our land use document, going over the expectations for them on their plot of land, and then just being on the property in general. There's the training requirements that are outlined, and I actually include this towards the end of the presentation, but just how they're expected to participate as far as attending all the classes, and just other requirements of submitting. There are some, I guess, documents we require within that, like their plot map, other plans that they have for their farm that season. The organic certification is part of that. We require them to fill out a packet for the certification. And this, I guess I'm referring to the basic training program with what I'm saying now. For those training requirements. And then it also outlines what we agree to, so what we're agreeing to provide for the land and the infrastructure, and what we're agreeing to provide for the training. And then we total the payment amount, and then a plan for how they're going to make those payments. The land lease for the other programs is pretty similar. They're just a lot lighter on the training, but really just clearly outlines the fees and the land use and who's responsible for what. And then I guess there are some other documents to participate in. We do have a food hub. We run a CSA and have some wholesale markets and a farmers market. So they have to participate in that. They're required to attend our food safety class. But again, we don't have a formal agreement that they signed, so that's something that I think that we're working on putting in place. Kind of also that would refer to we do contract crops for those accounts, so kind of outlining how that process goes, which we don't currently have in writing. So yeah, so but basically the participation agreement and land lease is what we use for our documents. So back to you, Robin.
So we're going to talk a little bit about land assignment next. I mentioned at the beginning that Global Growers has several different types of land opportunities in order to create pipelines into careers in agriculture. And this is what you're looking at now is kind of the basic specs for that. To get started on our incubator farm, the first year was certainly the hardest to make assignments because we were starting from scratch. We had to lay out the farm into different fields. There was a lot of measuring tape involved, and from the beginning we had a range of plots. That first year, that ranged from 1/8 of an acre to 1 acre. And while 1/8 of an acre sounds pretty small, we've found that for people who have not managed their own farm in this area and have an off-farm job that they're managing, that is really the right size for a first-year farmer. We have made exceptions to that for people who have farm management experience and can prove that they can manage more than that. But from the intake process, we have a good feeling of who is better prepared or more experienced than others, and so we assign those farmers to the larger plots. It's really at our discretion. We've never really had any issues with that, people being, upset that they got one plot and not another plot. People are really pretty open to it. All of our farmers pay the same rate for their land. It is $130 per acre per month, and that's a 12-month lease. So all assignments have a 1-year tenure. And as far as land expansion, some farmers now actually have multiple plots. And so overall on the farm, we have fewer plots than when we started. But land assignments have gotten much easier year to year because there's a limited number of plots that open up. So there's not quite as many decisions to be made. And over to Maggie.
So our land assignment for us, I would say, is definitely one of the more challenging aspects. You can see the map of our land on the left here. All of our land's on the left side of the river that's running kind of through the middle of the page. And so, we don't have a big kind of open field with nice square plots, as I'm sure not many programs do. And so we're constantly refining our process in how to effectively assign land and help the farmers understand what they're going to get and save everybody time. So really from the beginning, anyone who submits an application receives a tour of the available land and the infrastructure if they're available and in a place where they can come and visit. And so then they get an idea of what the land is that's available, and there might be a few different plots, there might be only one, and so throughout their application process, I think they tend to have a specific parcel and a specific acreage in mind in that process. So if they're accepted before the lease is signed, the farmer works with myself and also with our land manager to specify the exact parcel size that they want and the specific dimensions. And the only certain parcels are available to rent for incubator farmers based on risk. So we have basically decided that a lot of our more flood-prone fields we're not going to have as part of our available land for incubators. Mentor farmers, which are our long-term farm tenants, are allowed to use those parcels and rent them if they want. Just that decision is really based upon the fact that they have a better understanding about how the flood works here and where the waters really go, whereas someone who's new might not really have any idea. So the land manager creates that person's parcel on our map using a computer GIS program, and then the land manager and myself both work together to finalize the list of the items that the incubator is going to be renting in addition to the land. So they might say, okay, I want to use half a bay in the barn, I'm going to use 2 cooler pallets, and I'm going to use a cooler pallet in the food hub barn. And so we have a document where that gets filled in, and then both the land document with the acreage that they're going to be using as well as the rental document are updated for the finance manager to use for the billing. So the finance manager is who is in charge here of assigning leases and all those kinds of things. So it's my job along with the land manager to finalize really what the lease is going to look like in terms of what they're going to be renting, and then we just pass that information along to the finance manager. In terms of land expansion, we definitely, have struggled to find a balance between supporting the incubators and also supporting the mentor farmers. I think, the mentor farmers could potentially be the only farmers to use all of the land. So we really have to be cautious of keeping land aside to be able to have incubators, land available for incubators. So preference is usually given to incubators, and mentors many times, they're all aware of that they don't have a lot of opportunity to expand. And incubators are welcome to expand if they want to, if there is land available to grow on. And if the land that's available for incubators doesn't get used by incubators in a certain year, either because we don't have any new ones or they don't want to expand, we mentors are allowed to lease those parcels for 1-year leases at a time. So Katie, passing it on to you.
Okay, so our land assignments are really based on a overall farm management decision. So, so all our first-year farmers are together on quarter-acre plots, and that chunk of land may or may not stay the first-year farmer section. It might be rotated based on resting that ground, or if we can have a rotation within that plot of like 2 acres, then we'll do that. In their second year, when farmers increase their land to 1 acre, we try to keep them. We try to place them in a place where they can stay and increase to 2 acres in their third year. But that doesn't always work. If we need to, again, rest certain ground for our rotation, then they might be moved. We'd really like to keep them on the same plot, and so we're working on designing a system where that's easier to do. But how we've been doing it is just really trying to squeeze as many people in as possible, and so while keeping our management plan in place. So it does mean shifting people around sometimes. And as far as what plots people get, it's usually based on how much land they're farming, and a lot of our plots are different sizes, so just kind of putting them where it makes sense. And for the most part, people are okay with that. Some years it's an issue, especially if that plot hasn't been managed well previously. The farmer didn't do a good job of weeding, or in the previous year, then we sometimes have some issues with assigning people plots. But for the most part, people understand that we're trying to make the best of it, and so it works out. Let's see, but for the whole farm management and the organic transition, those farmers are placed on a plot of land that they will stay in for the 3 years that they sign the lease for. So they're usually given, and that's 3 to 4 acres that they're assigned to, and as long as everything goes well, they can stay on that land for 3 years. So as I was saying, first-year farmers start on a quarter acre. Sometimes that's an issue. People want to start on more, but we've also found that that's really a manageable amount for people that are commuting from the city, that have other jobs, that maybe have experience farming, but not in this context. So if everything goes well, they can increase to 1 acre in the second year and 2 acres in their third year. But like I said, that's if everything goes well. So we do a staff evaluation every fall for each farmer, and kind of agree whether it makes sense for them to increase their land or to stay on the same size, or maybe go up to just a ½ acre. If the farmer wants more than we're recommending, they do have a chance to show that they can manage that by turning in a plan. So we have planning classes in January where all the farmers are working on their plan for the season. So if they come up with a good plan and show that they're going to have more labor or more time, and really are explaining how it's going to be, better than the previous season, then we will reevaluate and possibly increase the land that they're renting. Let's see. Our costs, so for the first year, farmers are paying 40% of the full cost. In the second year, it's 60%, and the third year, 80%. The whole farm and organic transitions are paying 100%, except for the training cost and staff time. We just have that at $200, but that can really vary how much time we're spending with each farmer. So our land costs, the land itself is $250 an acre, and that's kind of including the overall land management, such as mowing and maintaining the fence. For cover crop and compost, they pay $310 an acre, and we provide that. The irrigation is $150 an acre. For the basic training program, it also includes the cost of tractor work. For the other programs, they're paying either us, or they do their own tractor work, or they can hire someone. So the totals for each program are over on the right here. Yeah. I think that's it. So back to Robin.
So farmer responsibilities and program responsibilities. Essentially at Global Growers, we provide the infrastructure. So that includes a wash station with 2 different lanes, tool storage, basic tools, a packing area, walk-in cooler, outhouse, irrigation system, bulk supplies, and things like that. But farmers are responsible for providing any specialty tools, and they're also responsible for purchasing all of their own inputs, such as plants, seeds, soil amendments, and things like that. So the farmers are covering really their costs of doing business without being responsible for the capital investment it takes to develop a farm space. And I think that really gets to, you know, what an incubator farm is, or what an incubator farm can be, to lower that barrier to entry, but still providing a realistic business environment where farmers understand what they're getting for, what it really takes to grow food. So I mentioned the land rate is consistent, just depends on how much land you have. It's $130 an acre. We also have our irrigation system. We guarantee that there's a water source, but farmers are responsible for delivering that water. So, you know, whether that's overhead irrigation or drip irrigation, they're responsible for that. And each field plot has a sub-meter for water that tracks how much water each farmer is using, and they're responsible for paying their own water bill based on the rate that we're paying. We do not have a well. We are on county water, and so that can add up, but once it's broken out by farmer, it's really pretty manageable. We require that farmers use organic practices and that they do an annual soil test and submit that soil test to us, which becomes a really good training tool. They're also responsible for record keeping, but we provide a record keeping notebook and an invoice booklet to them at the beginning of the year, which is a nice little gift to get them started and encourage them to use it and give some framework for it. And we offer ongoing workshops and technical assistance throughout the growing season to support them. Something we also do is order bulk supplies a couple times per year so that everyone can benefit from the cost savings. So they are paying for what they are purchasing, but the main savings comes from any bulk discounts that we can get, that we can pass along. And the major thing is sharing in the freight shipping charges. As far as how we communicate this to, how we communicate these responsibilities to our farmers, this is for the most part spelled out in our site use agreement, but we have a lot of interaction with our farmers, possibly erring on the side of too much. So we really rely on face-to-face communications as well as text messages. Not everyone we work with uses email, and so it's, you know, in order to, if there's a message to spread, we really need to do it one person at a time. But text messages over the last few years have been really helpful as more people have smartphones and all of that to be able to, you know, send out an update. And the major updates that we have are weather related. to let people know what's going on or what to expect that's coming up. So passing on to Maggie now.
So I skipped over our costs in the last section, but I'm going to go back to those at the end of this because I think it relates to the farmer responsibilities versus us. So basically, you know, our program is definitely geared towards people who are more on the independent end in terms of what they're responsible for doing and providing. So we provide people with access to land. We provide water at the edge of their field, so they are responsible for setting up their irrigation system, but they do have water to the edge. If they're on the river side, they also have the option of pumping out of the river instead, which we do not charge anything for. We have a cooler that they can rent a pallet or two or however many pallets of space in the cooler if they want. They're also able to build their own cooler if they want, and we have space for that to be available. We provide a wash station space. We don't really provide the tubs or the spinners or any of that. We usually tend to let the farmers sort of set up the wash station in the way that they want and share that kind of stuff. We have dry storage space that's available. We have greenhouse lot space that they can rent and put a greenhouse up on. We also provide mentorship, so we set up a relationship between a mentor farmer and an incubator farmer and kind of help facilitate that. We provide business planning assistance at no cost, and you know, really any kind of brainstorming or whatever chatting that the farmers want to do, they're always welcome to come stop by our office and just sort of talk through different ideas or financials or something like that. And then we also facilitate a farmer listserv, which is really the way that the farmers down here communicate with one another, and also a great way for us to communicate with all the farms. We have a farmer-owned equipment company that provides access to greenhouse table space for starting plants, so propagation space, tractors, and implements. So that used to be something that we ran as part of the nonprofit. We managed all the equipment and all the rental of the equipment, and we transitioned probably about 7 years ago to forming this company of its own, where we are a member of the company and a partial owner, as well as are many of the farmers. And there's more information on that on the tool shed as well. So farmers are, you know, they're responsible for all their own hand tools, harvest bins and totes, boxes, any amendments, setting up their irrigation system, all their own seeds, having their own vehicle. We don't have any shared trucks or cars, which is a question we get a lot. You know, their own trays, fencing, and you could obviously expand from this a lot, but just to give people an idea, a lot of those operational costs and needs farmers are responsible for themselves. We communicate these expectations by including these rental rates in our application packet, as well as explaining them when the applicant tours. So we try to make that very clear from the beginning. You know, I would say in general, all of our farmer tenants are very independent, so I think the less that they have to rely on us, probably the happier they are about that. And also, no one, you know, they don't tend to come to our staff for issues. They tend to communicate directly with one another about questions to do with shared infrastructure. And I would say sometimes the responsibility around building maintenance and repair and that kind of stuff that they're renting from us is not always clearly assigned. So just briefly, going back to the our rental sheet, hopefully everybody can see this. So you can see we have different fees for our mentor farmers in the first column and our incubator farmers in the second column. So incubator farmers receive a subsidized rate on their costs for the first 3 years. They get 20% off, and then for their last 2 years, because they're allowed to be on the land with us for 5 years, they pay the same that the long-term mentor farms pay. So you can see we've tried really hard to break out our costs as specifically as possible so that farmers not only understand, you know, their costs of doing business and the costs that they're paying to be down here versus maybe how it would be different if they were somewhere else, but also just so they get an idea of, like, when they get this bill for, once a month for 6 months out of the year. They understand what's within that. And so people are welcome to take a look at this after. I don't need to walk through every single piece, but we've worked pretty hard to make these as specific as possible and also as accurate for our, costs of maintaining and operating these assets and passing that, a lot of that expense on to the farmer. I think, Katie, over to you.
Our farmer versus program responsibilities, what we provide is a lot of the infrastructure. So we have the packing shed, and we do have that kind of set up with wash tubs, tables, hoses. We have 2 coolers that everyone gets some space in, barn storage. I didn't put water in here, but irrigation is also provided to the edge of their field, and then they figure it out from there. We have a greenhouse that people can rent space in. We have basic hand tools, and we also provide a starter kit for the first year, just to give people some basics. Basically, when it came to harvesting, I found people would show up to harvest and not have anything to do that with, so I tried to get them started with a few things. So farmers are responsible for their seeds, greenhouse supplies, harvest totes, irrigation, whether it's hose and sprinkler or drip tape, other growing supplies, stakes, mulch, any specialized equipment or rototiller, anything like that. For the overall farm maintenance, that's really program staff that does that, but we have tried to involve farmers more. So we require them to participate in packing the CSA boxes, to go to farmers market to help with setup and sales. And then we've also created work sessions that are both training and help us accomplish a task. So tool sharpening, this year we have to put new plastic on the hoop house. So that'll be a work session. Cleaning up the greenhouse to get started in the spring. Just different needs that arise. We kind of organize these work sessions and require participants to come to at least 2, in addition to helping with some of the marketing. We started an on-store farm just because there's not a great store locally to buy a lot of inputs, and farmers are really struggling with online purchases, and then we're certified organic, so there's restrictions and just getting all different things added to our input list was complicated. And then some things just make sense to order in bulk. So we have all the fertility, pest, and disease inputs available at the farm that they purchase per usage. Harvest supplies, we have production supplies, row cover, trellis, twine, drip irrigation, potting soil, boxes. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also have the compost for their field application and cover crop seed. And the reason we have those is that's really kind of the focus of our training in the organic transition and whole farm management program is kind of that sustainable land management. So again, sourcing just becomes difficult, takes a lot of time. So we've just found that if we have it here and really do the training on using those, and then hope to kind of get them connected so when they leave here, they feel comfortable sourcing on their own. But yeah, that's what we really found just makes things work the best here, is providing some of those inputs. So yeah.
And Robin, before you present, I just want to pop in and mention that we are running about 5 minutes behind schedule, so if we could keep this section tight, that would be great.
Sure. The time frame for incubation, we envisioned that it would be 1 to 3 years on an incubator farm, and then we would provide land matches. We've had farmers who have been there for 3 years now. After the first year, if a farmer is invited to return, we talk to them about expectations and what their goals are, since it's clear that this is something that they're really committed to. And so that's kind of the first stage of getting people off the farm, is figuring out what do they want. Land matches turned out to be a lot more difficult, so we're currently working on some other strategies, which I'll elaborate on in just a moment. But first, back over to Maggie.
So for us, for Timeframe, when we started the program, there was really no timeframe for transitioning out, and our assumption was that farmers would want to leave and sort of fulfill the dream of, you know, your own farm where you live, and then we started to see that because of a lot of different reasons, farmers wanted to stay here, and so we created a time limit about 7 years ago for how long people are allowed to be on the land, because we wanted to continue to be able to incubate new farm businesses here. And so the farms that were there at the time were grandfathered in as mentor farmers. And so that when you hear me use the word mentor farmers, that's what it means. And we haven't, for them, they're allowed to be here long term, as long as they want, as long as they're abiding by land use policies. And so our incubators are allowed to lease land here for up to 5 years, and beginning in their second year is really when we start to encourage them to think about and discuss their plans for transition. And mentor farms are allowed to stay as long as they're good tenants. So, you know, we work right from the beginning to just continue to remind and encourage folks that there is going to be a transition process, and we are going to be able to support them through that, but that this isn't a long-term land opportunity.
Okay, so our time frame is also 3 years for our basic program and well, for all 3 programs actually. So after the 3 years in the basic training, farmers can go on to lease for 3 years in one of the other programs. So it's not rigid though. If the relationship is working for us and for them, we try to find a role for that farmer. So if after 6 years they're not clear on, or there's not a clear transition plan, or they're not able to find the land or farm that they want, we have worked with farmers to stay, so, and to take on like a role of a mentor farmer. So one of our farmers this year, she actually became part of our staff and had a mentorship role, mainly in the greenhouse because that's where her strength was. But then now during the season, there's different roles she clearly plays in the packing shed, or just as a reference for farmers if no staff is around. So that's been really, really helpful actually. And then another farmer who's, I think this is his 6th or 7th year. We don't officially have him in a mentorship role, but he clearly plays that. And so it's been really helpful as we've had less staff in the field to provide technical assistance to have our mentor farmers doing that. So we will run into an issue, as more farmers want to transition to the whole farm management and want more land. So we'll have to work with those situations as they come up. So Robin.
So transitioning farmers off the incubator, I mentioned before that the land matches, we've adapted our approach somewhat, and basically the land matches that we were trying to do as we started out was very time consuming with a lot of dead ends. This could easily be a full-time job, but one that would be really difficult to fund properly since it's a lot of one-on-one time, and funders really want to see higher numbers and broad impact. So our new approach is one that was actually suggested by our group of farmers who came to us and essentially said that they'd like to have one big farm together. And their point is, why should each one of them get their own land and purchase their own walk-in coolers and irrigation systems and fencing and the rest of that necessary infrastructure, when they've proven that they can successfully share it, they just want to have more land. So we are currently looking for one big property that would give each one of them a 3 to 5 acre tract on average, plus several acres set aside for small incubator plots. And we are also looking at, instead of just trying to do farmer land matches, engage in a broader conversation around land access in the state of Georgia, linking up conservation efforts, working lands with hunger, food access issues, and seeing what we can do to address that in a more systematic way rather than a case-by-case basis. Over to Maggie.
So transitioning for us is, again, another area of challenge, a lot of challenges in this presentation, this topic. But, you know, I think that in the last year we've made a lot of improvements in this process of supporting people through the transition. So, like I said before, you know, we begin conversations early and try to gain a clear understanding of what the incubator is looking for. So starting to talk about, you know, do they need to be in this county or can they be farther away? Do they need to live on their land? How do they feel about the idea of leasing land instead of, you know, owning a farm? So just starting to bring up some of those questions, help them start to think about and maybe even put down on paper, you know, what their needs are, what's sort of the acreage that they're thinking about. And then a big part of it is just being a sounding board for their ideas and helping them map out potential scenarios. So we have a farmer now who is coming close to the time that he needs to transition out. And so a lot of the work with him has just been, you know, mapping out potential ideas he has. So he might find a property that he is interested in, but he doesn't really have an idea of whether he can afford it, whether it makes sense, you know, if the infrastructure is in good enough shape. So going out and looking at the sites with him, helping him create financial analysis to figure out, you know, what can he afford, even helping to keep an eye out for properties for people. So, you know, just making sure to have your ears and your eyes open, and that's where understanding what they want is really important. And then helping with those financial projections and networking with folks, getting the word out. You know, we have this producer, he's looking for this amount of land, and being their advocate and being their, you know, hopefully they've been a good tenant and you can get an idea, you know, you can be willing to represent them in the community and say, yeah, this person did a really good job.
So transitioning is definitely a difficult process, and it really works the best if the farmer is clear on what they want. So what has been successful is farmers that want to purchase a traditional farm, so with acreage in a rural area with a house and outbuildings. And that works well just because we can work with FSA then, Farm Service Agency, that kind of fits their process for the beginning farmer loan. And also Minnesota Department of Ag has been helpful in working with farmers to work on their business plan and even in looking for properties. So that partnership has been helpful, and we have had quite a few farmers go on to purchase a farm in the surrounding areas. What's harder is when farmers are looking for that non-traditional situation. So like Robin mentioned, we have a lot of farmers interested in sharing a piece of land, a piece of property, and sharing infrastructure, and then not necessarily living there. In a lot of cultures, it's traditional to live closer to the city and farm on a plot of land that you're not living at. So that's what often people are looking for, and since it's not a clear traditional model, it's been harder to make that happen. So we're trying to develop partnerships with landowners who want to see their land used that way, so we can develop some either long-term leases or work with farmers in purchasing that land. But we really haven't been able to make that successful. It's just not as easy to do. So we're still working on that.
So moving on to accountability, I think the number one thing, and you know, if there are any violations or things that go wrong, the number one thing that we've really focused on is not so much having a ton of rules, although we do have our site management agreement, but emphasizing a culture of cooperation and really being sure that people understand what, you know, their actions can directly affect others. That said, you know, if there is a problem, which has come up a handful of times, we start off with just having a conversation with that person. So a verbal warning to identify what the problem was and let people know this is what needs to be done to fix it within a certain time frame. And if that doesn't work out, what we do is we then issue a written memo with the corrective action that needs to happen. And we attach that to a copy of the site management agreement that everyone has signed and highlight the section of the agreement that was violated. That way it's really made clear to people that, hey, this isn't about you. This is about there's a system here in place and this was the problem. And so it makes it feel, you know, less like it's a personal attack and just being really clear as to what the problem is and what needs to be corrected. And then in each November, we make land decisions for the following year, which is the result of, you know, how the season went for everyone. If there's any farmers who come to us and say, you know, we don't want to come back next year, or we, you know, if we have a difficult decision to make that we're not going to invite someone back for the following year. We've actually, almost all farmers will select themselves out if it's not a good fit. I think we've only actually had to ask 2 farmers to leave, and that was, we actually ended up offering them smaller pieces of land at our market garden site, and that was just because it was clear that they really wanted to just grow food for their families. They weren't really interested in commercial agriculture. So we've never had any major issues that we haven't been able to correct through a conversation. And to Maggie.
So similar to what Robin was just saying, a big thing that we try to do is, instead of being an enforcer, we try to just create an environment where the farms are sort of held accountable for one another. And so I think this is a big place where having these established mentor farmers plays a big role in people's sort of standards that they hold themselves to. So I know, you know, for myself, if I was coming and farming and I was going to be surrounded and amongst, you know, people who really I looked up to and maybe whose farms I'd gone to for workshops in the past, or, you know, who I've seen present at conferences, I would want to, you know, I wouldn't want to embarrass myself, and I would want to make sure that I was keeping things tidy and keeping my weeds under control and all that. And so, you know, we try to create this this sort of environment of collaboration and community so that people, you know, feel this kind of sense of need to maintain responsibility. That being said, you know, there's always obviously the outliers in that. So in our program, no one's job is really to be the enforcer. We don't have that in anybody's work plan, that is their role. And so, you know, we do expect farmers to self-manage and hold each other accountable. IFEC, which is that farmer equipment company, was a big step towards putting more responsibility onto the farms. So before IFEC, you know, we were the ones who were dealing with people who didn't spray off implements the way that they should have been, or tractors breaking or things like that. And now, because it's farmer owned, it's not necessarily just that we're the only ones responsible for it. It's everybody has individual responsibility for certain things. And so a farmer might be the one holding you accountable, not a staff member of the nonprofit. If a farmer was to approach us to report a problem, we would speak to all parties involved. You know, and that rarely happens. I think the farmers tend to communicate directly with one another. But if we do see a field that's out of control or another problem that violates our policies, we do speak directly to the farmer. So Katie, on to you.
Okay. So we don't have a lot of violations, but I would say our two most common are weeds and poor attendance at trainings. For weeds, like I was mentioning earlier, we have a rotation that doesn't always keep people in the same plot, so it can greatly affect other farmers. And so we have it in the participation agreement that if the plot is not maintained properly, that we can go in and mow the field. And we have had to do that. The last few years we've had to do it for first-year participants, and it was pretty clear that they just were done and not able to maintain their plot. And so there wasn't, really an argument. They were okay with coming out and harvesting what they could and then being done. But with more experienced farmers, they have just gotten behind. They're still wanting to harvest from that plot, but the weeds are going to seed, and that's been a harder conversation. And in the one case that I'm thinking of, we did let the farmer harvest, but now that is really a problem field and no one wants to farm there. So that's, again, why we'd like to go towards keeping people on the same plot of land for their whole time here, to help with that accountability. And then attendance, that's challenging because if we, in the basic training program, there's a lot of training and people are coming in with, often no experience. And so if they're missing a lot of classes, then it's, then they're looking for that information in other ways, and it becomes a lot of staff time. So we really want them to attend classes. And we have it in the participation agreement that 3 unexcused absences prevents them from participating the next year. But that doesn't, everyone's motivated by different consequences, and some people don't know if they're coming back, so it's not always a motivating force. And then also it kind of becomes unclear what's unexcused. So that's been challenging. I think, for some of our classes, like our food safety, we require it to sell to our food hub, and even though it's one of the least exciting classes, we always have perfect attendance. So I think going in that direction more, finding, just consequences that are going to work, or, clearly communicating that the reason these classes are important, has worked in the past too, that just, I think people don't often, they see a title of a training and it doesn't sound interesting, but, clearly communicating how that training is going to help them be a successful farmer, something in the past that I found helpful. We're also currently dealing with problems with our tools. There's a lot missing and a lot coming back broken, and since we're, the staff are not always here, so we're not sure, what's going on, but we just planned a meeting, and I agree that the accountability has to be among the farmers, so because they're the ones that are around and they're the ones that need the tools. So my plan in that meeting is to just really communicate that, the importance, of accountability to each other, and that's why, these things need to be maintained and taken care of. Back to Robin.
So this last section is about how do our policies and guidelines support the development of a successful farmer. And something that I spend a lot of time thinking about and sharing with our staff is it's our job to really, the best thing that we can do is to create a productive space and then to get out of the way and let the farmers really be themselves. I think that a successful farmer is a combination of the ability to work hard and to have some common sense and creative problem-solving abilities. We do help farmers with time management and helping them to structure their time, and oftentimes that's really just a conversation to start and say, how are you structuring your time, and to walk them through it, not to tell them this is how it has to be done. We find it's incredibly helpful for people to have family support for what they do, whether that is family members taking on additional responsibilities in the household, or actually the, physical help on the farm and coming out on harvest days. Farmers, someone mentioned this earlier, but it is important for them to have some financial stability and to be able to make some investments in their business. That said, one of the things that we do is have an informal line of credit that we offer. So as far as land payments or water payments, or if they're, if we've purchased supplies on behalf of the farmer, we will defer those payments until they have income coming in from their sales. We've never had an issue of somebody not paying their bill, but giving them that space to kind of practice and understand what their cash flow looks like is really helpful. And our best farmers are the ones who are spending time helping others and building strong relationships, and are really self-advocates and come to us constantly with questions. So the more that we are communicating with the farmers tends to be the more that they're really getting out of the whole experience. So like most things in life, what you put in is what you get out. And I think it's our job just to create a space for farmers and their families to be able to practice that before they dive in and make an even bigger investment. And over to Maggie now.
So with this slide, I was thinking more specifically kind of about profiles of a successful farmer within an incubator context. So I think Robin brought up a lot of really good points about, what it takes to be a successful farmer, both in an incubator and just generally. And so our goal, is really to create farmers that understand their business in a realistic environment, and also farmers that are proactive. So the reason that, we have a fairly bare bones kind of program structure in terms of, we don't require classes, we don't require regular check-ins, is because we want people who are proactive. The reason that our rates are the way that they are is because we want people to understand their business and their financials from a realistic perspective, so that when they do transition off, they're not shocked by the price of a mortgage or the price of a rental fee somewhere else. So, we want to put the responsibility in the hands of the farm owners and the managers to run their operations independently. And obviously, no farm is operating completely independently. Strong relationships are really important. And so, we don't want farmers who just rely on us for their success, because we see that staff changes and that their land scenario could change. And our policies are pretty hands-off, and so therefore, they encourage clear communication, work on building trust amongst your peers and, relying on your peers, collaboration with other farmers, and also taking responsibility for what you're doing. And at the same time, all of these reduced our own costs in terms of staff time and our need to fundraise, and we hope that they help to make this program more sustainable and more have more potential to last for the long term.
Okay, so I answered the question by looking at our requirements and what we're, the requirements we have for participants. Specifically, these are in their first year, and we came up with these based on what we think will make them successful as a farmer. So, so really coming to all the trainings, having the resources, they need to get started. I won't read through all these, but just we have definitely more of a hands-on approach to kind of setting some milestones for them that we think need to be met each year in order to, in 3 years, be at a place where they're, successful in managing a plot of land, and then to go on and learn some more, farm management skills. But really, what we're trying to do is just balance, with our policies, to balance, creating independence, to offer enough support and also to maintain fairness and functionality on a community farm so that things can keep operating. So, creating independence, we, again, have those yearly requirements, so they're kind of on track. We increase the cost every year, so they're getting more of a realistic perspective. And then we increase their responsibility each year too. So it's kind of a big jump from the third year in the basic training to the whole farm management, because their costs go up, and then also suddenly they're responsible for all their own tractor work and markets and liability insurance and all organic certification. But it's not as big a jump as transitioning to their own farm. So, they still have all that infrastructure in place, and yeah, but it's preparing them to be more independent. Management skills we're really trying to teach. I think one that we, really, I think teaches a lot is just limiting their land, because a lot of people want more land than they can really manage effectively, or they want more land and then they can't sell the produce. So, managing their time so they still have time to market is a big challenge. So I think by limiting people's land, we're really helping them be successful. And then offering enough support. So again, the trainings to really get them information that they need. We do a lot of farm visits as part of those trainings. I think that's really helpful for people to see farms that are operating independently, to get a vision for what they want and where they, what's possible. Offering a lot of supplies on the farm. Again, it's, it's a lot on our end to sometimes have those all available, but I think it's support that a lot of beginning farmers need in the situation with the populations we're working with. And then the infrastructure is definitely, helps them be successful. And then, the other things we're thinking about with policies is just, we have to have a functional place here for them to be successful. So, having equal access, so everyone has the same opportunities, so equal access to the tools, to the packing shed, to the cooler. And then, we have limited staff time, so we have to have policies in place so that can work for everyone. So, yeah, but it takes a lot to be, I think, a successful farmer. So, yeah, what Robin outlined is I kind of started the slide with that, with what people, the attributes they need, and definitely agree with that those are what we see. The farmers that we see being successful have those attributes, and then we're just trying to facilitate that by the policies we're setting up. So back to you, Bree.
Great, thanks so much, Katie. Maggie, Ramid, and Katie, thank you so much for sharing your insight into your program operations. This was incredibly helpful. Unfortunately, we have run over time, so I'm just going to ask one question because I feel that a lot of the other questions were covered in subsequent slides, but we had a question about farm annual incomes, and I'm wondering if off the top of your heads you could each provide maybe a ballpark range of the kind of earnings you're seeing on your incubator plots.
This is Robin. It does vary quite a bit. I can give a few figures. First of all, our market co-ops, so the sales that we're doing are about $100,000 a year. That's distributed amongst our farmers, but all of our farmers have their own market outlets in addition to selling through us, and we do not require that they report those earnings. So I don't really have them. We do have one farmer, only one of our farmers is truly a full-time farmer, not relying on any off-farm income, so doing farming as a full-time job. And but I can't speak to the figures among our individual farmers very well.
This is Maggie. For us, it really ranges also from last year. It ranged from about 4,000 in gross for a farm all the way up to, you know, almost $500,000. So it really varies quite widely depending on. We have a farm that's, you know, 2 to 3 acres all the way up to a farm that leases about 50 acres. So we have a ton of variety. You know, it probably averages more between the 60 to 120,000 range, but it varies quite widely.
This is Katie, and yeah, I would agree. It really varies. Our sales for bigger farm are around 100,000, and that's all from farmers here. I would say 12,000 an acre is, you know, if someone's for our growers who are here as their main job. I would say that's the average. We do require farmers to report their sales outside of selling to us because of our organic certification. We're supposed to report that, but I think we've struggled with getting an accurate number there. So that's, yeah, so 12,000 is kind of what we've used. But yeah, it's hard to know really for sure on that one.
All right, thank you all for sharing that. Once again, anyone who has asked a question that we don't have time to cover today as we wrap up, I'll follow up with you via email and make sure that we're able to connect you with the person to answer all your inquiries. Thanks again to our presenters, and thank you to you all for joining us. I hope this was helpful, and I hope to see you all at the NIFTI Field School this October, the 7th through 9th in Durham, North Carolina. Registration will open on August 10th for the field school, and I hope to see you all there. I'll be sending out a follow-up evaluation along with a copy of the presentation to everyone that's registered, and feel free to share far and wide. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Bree.